Okay, let's go ahead and jump into some examples now that we have covered the formulas. I'll go scroll back to the formulas. We've covered these. Let's use those to create our own confidence intervals. So this example is talking about whelks. Whelks are, so it tells us that the small round holes you often see in seashells were drilled by other sea creatures who ate the former dwellers of the shells. I think this is a lovely example. Whelks often drill into mussels, but this behavior appears to be more or less common in different locations. Researchers collected whelk eggs from the coast of Oregon, raised the whelks in the laboratory, then put each whelk in a container with some delicious mussels. That is my favorite little part. Only 9 out of 8 whelks drilled into a mussel. The researchers want to estimate the proportion of Oregon whelks that will spontaneously drill into mussels. And we're going with 95% confidence level. All right, let's go ahead and jump right to it. So we know we need a 95% confidence level. We also know that this is dealing with proportions, which means we need the proportion formula. So we need to find our proportion. That's the p hat. And the p hat would be the 9 out of 98. So I'll start with 9 over 98. And then I'm going to add or subtract my critical value. We said 95% confidence interval, so I'm going to use 1.96. And then we'll take the square root of that proportion, so the 9 over 98, multiplied by 1 minus 9 over 98. And then I divide that by the sample size. Remember, n is the sample size. And our sample size is 98. Now, it's not super obvious in how I drew it, but all of that is under the square root. That is important. And for the most part, it shouldn't be too hard to type this into a calculator. If you're worried about it, you can type pieces in at a time. You can use store feature. I've taught you guys how to store numbers, so such as the 9 over 98, you could store as a variable. So you do what you want, but it's generally not too crazy hard to type this in. However, when you type it in, you will need to type it in twice. You'll need to do it once where you're subtracting the margin of error and another time where you're adding the margin of error. And because we're doing an interval, the lowest number should come first, meaning the one where you subtracted the numbers should go first, and then the other number where you're adding the margin of error should go second. So I'm going to go ahead and put this in, and we will figure out our confidence interval. And I should have just done this earlier, but here we are. Okay, I did the addition one first. So we get 0.149. And then let me, just going to switch this over. We get 0.034, but that rounds to a 5, so I'll go to 5. And there is my confidence interval. I just typed all that into a calculator and got those numbers. And I would take a time, if you need to pause the video at any point, do it. You can just go ahead and check those numbers and help each other out in getting those correct answers. I do want to talk about what those answers mean. So what this is telling us is that between, and I'm going to change these are proportions, remember, in proportions you can change to percent. So this is saying that between 3.5% and 14.9% of Oregon whelks will spontaneously drill into these mussels. So it's somewhere within that range, is what it's saying. Let's go ahead and do another example really quick, now that we've done that one. Okay, this one has to do with Tanya wanting to know the proportion of her school's seniors who plan to attend prom. So she interviews a simple random sample of 50 of the 750 seniors in her school and finds that 36 plan to go to prom. And this time we're going to construct a 90% confidence interval. We're dealing with a proportion again, so we'll still use the same formula. So one of the things that messes people up is sometimes there's extra information in the problem. This 750 seniors, throws people off because they think that that's their sample size. The sample size is 50 because that's how many Tanya asked. So the 750 is not even used in this problem. So our proportion in this problem would be 36 out of the 50 people she asked. So 36 over 50. Plus or minus. Our critical value, since we're doing a 90% confidence interval, is the 1.645. And then we've got the square root of our proportion. And then we do 1 minus that same proportion over the sample size, which is still just 50. Remember, we're not using all hundreds, or 750. Let's go ahead and calculate that. So we've got, I'll do the subtraction one first. I'm going to type it in, so it'll take a second. And I've got an answer of 0.616, which, remember, this is proportion, so you could convert it to percentages in your head. We'll keep it as a proportion in our answer. So it's kind of like 61.6%. And then this next one is like about 82.4%. And once again, feel free to pause and calculate that so that you can see if you can do it. But now that we have our answer, sometimes you'll have a little follow-up question. So this follow-up question just says, Tanya suspected that it'd be around 80%. So does this confidence interval show evidence of Tanya's belief? And we can say yes in this case because 80% is within the range or within the interval. So we can say that it could be about 80% of the seniors who actually attend prom.